Hi. Hi, everybody. I can't hear any of you. You're muted.
Now, can you hear us?
Can you hear us
Yes.
now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay.
We're calling the roll, so it's your turn.
Okay, Sheila Amder, member.
Gina DeVivo Brassall, member.
Martina Wharton, member.
Paul Stern, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm not a member.
Paul Stern, chairman.
Louis Brown, guest.
Jennifer Kaufman, staff.
Okay. We need a motion on the not minutes.
Well,
Or-
you have two minutes.
Oh, for two sets of minutes, that's right.
You
Okay, sorry.
you can do one motion to pass the
Yeah.
notes and the
Yes.
minutes of April
We'll
3rd and the
accept one
notes.
motion to approve all of the notes and minutes.
I move to approve the April and May minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So move.
And Mr. Chair, would it be possible to move new business item A up to before? I don't believe you have public comment. Move it up to before.
Yes, I was gonna suggest that, but
Right.
as a courtesy to Lou here, he doesn't need that, so just. Thank you. Mhm.
So do you want to plug in to see?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
I hope that works. So I think we'll plug it in and then we need to share it.
Got it. Got it.
All right, how techie are you in this?
You have to share a screen.
I think he needs to click that. There we go.
Share screen?
I'm sorry, I missed, are you with the town?
No, I'm a developer, Connecticut-based developer.
Okay.
Of affordable housing.
Wow.
It's under new business.
We should have had pizza then.
So I'm not sure.
Oh, it is.
So I'm not currently in the meeting, so I don't have an ability to share this.
Oh, so you gotta get into the meeting.
Yeah.
So
If you send me a link, actually, let me see. I don't believe that you.
I never sent you so I do it a different way. And Sandy's usually here to help me. Meeting? Can we,
I can listen, as long as you guys can see it. Can you see it?
the
Even.
invitation? No. I don't have email from here.
You should,
Cannot, not on.
I should be able to be on the screen though, if you kind of go back to what we did before.
All right.
I think if we.
Otherwise I can get,
We'll get out of we won't show the meeting, we'll show your
Sure.
screen, right?
You
Yeah.
could forward him the email that has the link on
Yeah.
it. That'd be the easiest.
I was gonna say I could do that if you wanted me to.
He can-
Yeah, I could do it. I have my phone.
thank you.
Yeah, I turned my phone off.
If you don't have it, I have it.
I have so many emails. It came from Sandy or did it come from?
Well,
It came,
Martina has it.
I have it here.
So we just need
Affordable
Lou's
Housing
email
Committee, so
address.
just
Okay.
need to send that to them, right?
Right here, yeah.
You have the full. Yeah.
Okay, so. Let's see, forward. I talked to myself, sorry. Am I doing I Brown?
L Brown.
L Brown, okay. At Honeycomb?
Right. RE.com.
Sorry, I'm slow.
Thank you, Martina.
LL. Yeah. Oh. Come on. And. Can I not send from
Are you
here?
connected to the internet or your data?
If you already, it always is, so I don't know why it's not coming from.
Well, do you want to give me, I've got it right here, so just please repeat your email address and I'll send it.
LL Brown,
One L.
L-
L
L
Brown.
Brown.
L
No,
Yeah,
One L.
One L Brown.
L Brown,
at
okay,
honey, HONEY, comb, COMBRE.com.
There it goes. Sorry.
Got it? That's okay.
It went.
Yeah, okay.
okay, we can both send it, I guess.
Went.
Martina was able to send it, Sheila.
Okay,
Make
Thank
sure. I had to put him in my
And I sent it
contact.
as well, just because I found it from Jen, so you have it.
Pick the one you want, Lilith.
Put you in my contacts and
Yeah.
you just send it.
I know, okay.
I'll probably go, "Who's that little brown?"
Martinez came.
Oh, good.
You won. Although I don't see, I see the agenda, but I don't see a link to the.
If you go way down.
honeycomb RE,
Honeycomb, BRE, oh, RE, yes, honeycomb.
it's
RE.
come, I just sent the Zoom link, so,
Okay. Did you get it?
Oh. I think Martinez was just the agenda. I don't think.
Oh, that's it. Oh, not the link. Okay,
It's-
the link's coming.
It's receiving, it's coming. Making its way.
I just realized I left home without my phone.
Ooh.
So how am I gonna find my way home?
You can follow me, I know.
I was just gonna say.
Just go up around, Joe, longer, you live over there.
did you receive it?
Got it.
Good, thank you.
Since I just zoomed in, I had it right here.
Here he goes, he's moving in.
What's the passcode? It's, who wants me to enter a passcode?
Oh,
It's 7000829.
Someone has to let him in.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself here. Which might affect Sheila's ability to hear me. Otherwise, we're gonna have to.
Sheila, you should mute yourself.
Yes,
Okay,
Sheila, can you hear me?
Yep.
okay.
Why is it feeding back?
I'm
Oh, it might be yours
It's
microphone is picking up.
Yeah,
what-
you should turn up your microphone.
I'm muting yours.
Both, yeah, both of mine are muted.
Really? Someone else got their mic on?
No,
We have our mic on.
Oh, that's-
And Sheila should be able to hear.
Sheila, can you wave if you can hear us?
All right. Still a little bit of an echo coming off, it's coming off there.
The lights went out.
That's
Very good.
Sheila, can you hear us?
good,
Is it
perfect. All
better?
Lou's mic is active now.
right.
Yeah, she can.
Well, should I march through? I'll march through and apologize in advance to Jennifer because we just went through this.
Okay,
But
it's a good one. You'll know it well.
so my name is Louis Brown. First, want to just thank you for the invite to come and talk. I am a developer, mostly of what I'm now calling, for a variety of reasons, attainable housing rather than affordable housing. Without getting into the whys and wherefores, and I don't agree with it, but when you say affordable housing, it typically creates some idea in someone's head of the type of housing and prospectively the type of residents that housing may be attractive. And in my experience over the last 20 years, again, I don't subscribe to this, but I've been in a lot of different towns and cities, and oftentimes it tends to be a negative response. So what I've tried to change the naming convention to attainable housing, which really is effectively the same thing, but maybe sounds nicer on the ear. I don't know. Yeah, and when I speak and yeah, and I wish you didn't have to do that, but sometimes you have to do things because we deal with people that aren't necessarily rational in our world. It seems more and more often. But I've been developing attainable housing both in and out of Connecticut for the last 20 years. Before that, I was a lawyer in Boston. I was assistant corporation counsel for the city of Boston during the big dig days, and worked very closely with my corporation counsel was a woman named Marita Hopkins. She served in a dual role. She was corp counsel and also Mayor Menino's chief of staff. So during that time in Boston, I got a lot of exposure on the law side to on the public law side to real estate, construction, public-private partnership. I moved back. I'm from Connecticut. I grew up in West Hartford. I went to Hall High School and then eventually moved back. Maybe TMI, but I share this with Jennifer. In 2005, my dad died suddenly. And I moved back with my wife. Our son was 1.5, and my wife was pregnant with our daughter. So my son's now 21. My daughter is going to be 20. We have loved raising our family and our kids in different communities throughout the state. So when I moved back to Connecticut, I decided to pivot away from practicing law and get into real estate development on the business side. And actually, one thing I didn't mention, which is kind of an interesting side piece of the story or my story, is before I was a lawyer in Boston, I was a teacher, and I worked in what was then called a therapeutic milieu school. So it was students who had been removed from the Boston public school system, oftentimes due to gang affiliation, violence, drugs. There was always a common denominator, and that was very, very difficult family situations, very, very difficult economic situations, and a natural corollary was very, very difficult housing situations. I did that for 3 years, and I absolutely loved it. And then I started an evening law school program in my 3rd year of teaching at Suffolk Law, and thought that I was going to, on graduation, get into juvenile justice. I spent a summer working what was called the Juvenile Justice Clinic in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and quickly became disenfranchised with the juvenile justice system because it really, though it said it did not have the best interest of the juvenile in mind. It was really just a system that was a revolving door system. So I started my law career at a small kind of boutique litigation law firm, and then I went and became assistant corporation counsel for the city. I spent 3.5 years there. That brought me back to Connecticut in 2005, at which point I said, I'm interested. I've always been interested in real estate. I've been doing all this real estate law and construction law, and I took a job at a small family-owned real estate development company based in Simsbury, Connecticut. And when I was interviewing, one of the principals said to me, like, you've been a lawyer, you've been a teacher, like, I don't understand why you're here. And I said, well, actually, to me, it makes perfect sense. Like, this is coalescing everything I've done. Because I was going to be building housing for families that I worked with when I was a teacher and putting together deals with structures I'd worked with as a lawyer. So to me, it felt right. So he got over that question and I suppose agreed with my answer because they hired me. And I spent almost 17 years there, eventually leading for the last probably 7 to 10 the acquisition and development group and growing what was a small family business to a business that had over 10,000 apartments that stretch from Connecticut to New York State, down to Virginia, and as far west as Texas. And I told Jennifer that in my last years there, I was spending much more of my time out of state than in state. I was spending a ton of time in Texas, which is super interesting because it is a very progressive housing state, similar to Montana. If you look at, again, not to be political, but if you look at the political kind of climates in both of those states, that might not be the first thing you think, but from an affordable housing standpoint, you go into Texas, you get stuff done. You go to Montana, they've gotten rid of all zoning.
Yeah.
And
That would be for law.
but very, very progressive from real estate tax treatment, really promoting figuring out ways to create this housing. And I'm not naive to not know that there are big developers who get big financial rewards, and so that feeds into it. Having said that, I also believe that you can still do good things and do well, and the two things are not mutually exclusive. So in any event, in 2021, COVID, the whole nine, my kids were spending less and less time with me and my wife, and they were off to college. And I decided, actually, it was funny. One day I was at lunch with the founder, and I said to him, I think it's my time. And he said, for what? And I said, I'm leaving. So I called my wife on the way home and I said, I did it. And she's like, what'd you do? I said, I quit. She's like, what do you mean you quit? So that was exactly. That was 2021. And by 2022, January, I had divested my interests in most of the developments that I was involved in. I had separated from the company and I had started Honeycomb. So that kind of takes us to 2022, and what I thought I would do here, and please, if there are questions, just interrupt me because I'm prone to
I just want to.
being obtuse.
Should have mentioned this, but the reason why I met Lewis, I'm on the Capital Region Council of Governments Regional Housing Strategy. And so it's a group of planners, social service agencies and developers. And so the first meeting, they had assigned seating, and Lewis and I sat together and we started talking, and I was like, oh my gosh, you need to come to Mansfield and talk. So that's how Lewis ended up here. So I should have started with that. So apologies.
No, that's right. And then there's a connection to Mansfield. My brother has a real estate firm and has been active in this community for many, many years. Though not so much anymore. He does have one piece of land left. So I'm going to start by just showing you kind of in 2022, there was a short list of people that between 21 and 22 I called just to say, here's what I'm doing. What do you think? Some people said you're crazy. Some people said this is awesome. It was a real range. And one of the people I called was an architect that I had been friends with. I had never done anything with, not even with him as an architect for the last 10 or 12 years before that. But he always kind of would come to me with ideas. So he was one of the people I called, and I said, hey, Joe, he's from down in Fairfield County. I said, Joe, this is what I'm doing. If you ever come across something, maybe we can collaborate. And that was in, late 21, early 22. In February, I think, of 22, he called me and said, I know you grew up in West Hartford. Have you ever heard of the West Hartford Inn? I've been developing this relationship with the owner. And I said, I actually used to have, me and my brother had our birthday parties. Our parents had our birthday parties in what was then Pancho McGee's, the restaurant at the West Hartford Inn. So, and it's the real estate as a real estate person, it's basically, though the names of the streets are different, it's Main and Main, right? It's right outside of West Hartford Center. It's walkable to everything. It's unbelievable. So at first we said, oh, maybe we'll do a boutique hotel. The town really needs that. Maybe we'll do market rate. Well, there's over 1,000 units coming out of the ground. And I said, no, we're gonna turn this into attainable housing, 100%. And I approached the town, and the theme that will run through these remarks and hopefully will resonate with you. And the reason I came here was because Jennifer invited me, which sometimes towns will say, you know, they only want you to, they want you to stay as far away as possible. And we'll get to kind of that slide. But I get excited and I'm happy to do this, whether it leads to something for me or not, just because if I can at all impact or influence the way people think about this housing, then I've done my job, whether or not I develop anything here. So what we did was, this was 52 rooms. This was an old hotel, but had awesome bones. It was built in 1965, you know, constructed better than any building today. We totally gutted it. We turned it into 24 apartments, 100% affordable. On this side, we have 21 bedrooms and 4 2-bedrooms, just the way the building lays out. And we took the old Pancho McGee's building, which had actually been shuttered. There was a shooting here, which West Hartford, God forbid something like that happens in West Hartford. Not that it should happen anywhere, but that building got immediately shut down. So it had been shuttered for 3 years. We demolished that and we built up just under this, the hotel roof line, 4 stories of residential. These are 20 apartments and they're all 2-bedrooms, beautiful views. Our windows are super tall. They're Intus windows. They're triple insulated. You cannot hear any street noise in this building. And so it took us from the time of submitting our financing application to completion, which was just last month, about 18 months. 44 apartments. Yeah. And yes, Sheila, sorry.
But Sheila is,
She's muted. She has to unmute herself.
oh, can you unmute yourself, Sheila?
Okay, so yeah, thanks. Just quickly, I know this development. So Louis, what's the what do you describe as affordable, the 24 units? What are the average median income and what was the financing?
Sure. So the incomes range from 80% of area median income down to below 30%. We were awarded 13 project-based vouchers from the West Hartford Housing Authority. Those project-based vouchers are 30% and below. We have 50% vouchers. We have other 50% non-voucher apartments, and then we have 80% apartments. So under the program that we work in, which is, it sounds like you're familiar, Sheila, is the 1986 Tax Reform Act that created the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program.
Okay.
Under Ronald Reagan. That program has actually become more robust since '86 and will become more robust this summer if, in fact, the Senate passes the tax legislation bill that has been passed by the House. So it's a program that has enjoyed bipartisan support, again, since '86 and only grown in its breadth. So that's the level of affordability. I was telling Jennifer that we are 100% pre-leased. We have probably a quarter of the 44 apartments have already moved in the last couple of weeks. It is a super interesting cross-section of people. We have a West Hartford teacher. We have a nursery school teacher. We have a retired CCS, Central Connecticut State University professor who is a writer who I've been keep running into. He's a wonderful guy. We have a chef who has a developmentally disabled son who will be occupying a 2-bedroom. It is, the word, melting pot becomes a cliche, but this is a melting pot of people. And that's what housing should be, whether it's affordable or not affordable. It's just, you bring different people together. That's what makes communities interesting and vibrant.
It's an interesting comment on our times that you have a teacher who qualifies for attainable housing and a chef. And people who you would normally think wouldn't need any kind of better economy.
So just to give you an idea of the 80% of area median income, just to put numbers to it, in Hartford County, for a one-person household is about $70,000 a year.
There are numbers too.
Yeah.
We use this.
Yeah.
We're at the same
And a
next
teacher in
meeting.
West Hartford who is in their first 3 years of teaching, that may even have a master's degree, is earning $52,000 to $55,000 a year.
That's what I mean.
So this teacher is at the low end of what we deem to be acceptable, so that she is not rent burdened. So within the 80%, we even set our own ranges because we don't want someone to not be able to have to make a choice between, are they going to be able to pay for food or go out to dinner or whatever, do something else, or pay their rent. So we set standards that we think are reasonable or manageable for someone to be able to budget to. And what I forgot to mention is within our rent structure, we pay for all utilities. So that is one less, I'd say, burden on the resident, particularly now, like when I get my electric bill from, I want to throw up. And half of the charge, I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Like half of the charge isn't even utility related. It's a fee. And so imagine if you are, struggling to make ends meet and then you all of a sudden get your Eversource bill. And oftentimes the other interesting thing about the program that most people don't know, and I didn't actually mention, but it's good because now you're hearing something different. When you income qualify under this program in year one, which you have to, so if I use the teacher, for example, she income qualifies as an 80% earner. She actually has some room because she can go up to 70,000. So if she gets a raise or she changes her job or whatever. However, if she was, say, at the top of the threshold at 70,000, she is allowed in year two and beyond to go up to 140% of area median income and not lose her housing. So the program was conceived, and candidly, that's not necessarily the norm for most residents, for most people, right? No one's boss comes in and says, "Great job, I'm doubling your salary." Like that just doesn't happen,
Answer all the time.
except here.
Great job to get to keep your salaries.
Right. So, but the intent of the program was really before 86, the main driver of affordable housing was Section 8. HUD Section 8. And once you go over 80% of area median income, you are no longer eligible to live at or to benefit from a HUD rent subsidy. And here you do not lose your housing. So the idea was housing stability is a vital part of everybody's life. Like the kids that I taught in Boston, it doesn't matter. Once that goes down the drain, it's a drain on municipal resources because there's police involvement, there's ambulance involvement, there's people using the emergency room as their ER because they have no place to sleep. And so they'll camp there. What people don't understand necessarily is the societal costs of funding this sort of housing. People say, well, how could you build this? It costs so much. And people, it's for people that are, only making X. The alternative is society is going to pay for it on a multiple of X in different ways, like
Social costs,
so the social costs,
healthcare and housing and all those things.
and they are much more expensive than housing.
What does our affordable housing deal work when someone in, let's say at the standard, pick a number, if their income exceeds the minimum maximum?
They have to either move to a market rate unit if available,
Mhm.
or they have to find other housing.
So you've figured out a way to build kind of a buffer in there for.
Well, I can take no credit because I was 13 when they came up with the program, but
So this is a different program that we're using.
So we're using, there's no federal funding, these are all
Right.
from our zoning. So you're saying that the LIHTC,
LIHTC rules allow for
so
that.
that would be what is the case for Eagleville Green, because they're using LIHTC.
Yeah. Mhm.
So,
I see, okay.
Now, if a person receives either a project-based or personal voucher subsidy and their income goes up over 80%, then they would no longer qualify for that rent subsidy, but they wouldn't lose their housing.
okay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that subsidy has not changed. 80% is the cutoff for rental subsidy
Mhm.
for vouchers or again, they call it, I hate the word, but this is what it's named, is project-based, Section 8. Sure.
A staff person that works with tenants on a yearly basis, that would.
Yeah, everything has to, every year people have to recertify with our property management team. So it's all professionally managed.
And that's what's gonna be happening like at the standard as well. We have to recertify every.
Yeah, this is heavily regulated.
And so since you took federal funds, Are you also reporting it then federally? Like, does it go that way? Like your project manager has to report up?
So
Or,
the funds come in, it is a federal credit, but it actually gets allocated by the states. So we have reporting requirements to CHFA, to DOH. What would happen is if we were out of compliance, say a resident was actually over income and we missed it, there's what is called a Form 8823. It's an IRS form. And we would have an opportunity to cure that. But if there was no opportunity to cure it, there is consequences to us as the owner manager for having allowed someone to,
take this one.
take the spot when they really didn't qualify. Yeah, so there are real consequences, both financial and reputational and otherwise.
And these are all deed restricted units, I take it.
We're deed restricted here for 50 years. So it's some of the best West Hartford real estate, and we're deed restricted for 50 years, which to me makes all the sense in the world, right? Like I would think of no other way to do this. And I would be happy. I said, you can come. I'm very proud of what we've done here. A lot of people said to me, as I said before, like, you're crazy, you're doing this in your backyard. And there were plenty of, moments when I wake up in the middle of the night thinking, I think I maybe really am crazy, because what if this goes wrong, or what if that goes wrong, or what if this happens? But, hindsight being 2020, this has turned out to be one of the most impactful things that I've ever done.
Does the town of West Hartford give you any kind of tax credit or financial edge, or I'm
Yeah.
looking for a term here?
No, it's a good question. And actually, I was mentioning to Jennifer, in this, it couldn't have been a worse time to start this, because you remember that in January of 22, interest rates started doing something that they hadn't done in the last 15 years. They started going up.
Mhm.
And so when I started looking at this deal, we were underwriting an interest rate in the 4s. And then it went into the 5s, and then it went into the 6s. We finally locked it almost 7. But before we even got to that, the deal was going to fall apart. And again, it's better to be maybe lucky than good. In the summer of 23, or no, excuse me, in the summer of 22, the IRS came out with guidance that said unused ARPA funds could be used for a variety of community development things, one of which was affordable housing. And I happened to be on vacation, but I saw the release and I sent it to the town of West Hartford Economic Development Director. And I said, Kristen, have you seen this? And she said, no. And I said, well, do you have any unused ARPA funds? Like, we are hemorrhaging. This deal is going to fall apart. She goes, yeah, we have $12 million. I said, well, that's nice. And I said, well, before you rearm the police and buy all new whatever, can we do something with this? So they set aside $6 million and they set up an affordable housing fund. And because we were ready to go, we were the first in line. We applied for and received $3 million. And that actually breathed life back into our development. So that's what got us. So the answer is yes. We also did get, although West Hartford said that they would never do it again, we did get a 10-year tax fixing agreement.
So that's under the.
Wait, which statute was that?
It was before the new 30-year came out.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, and it's the fixed asset assessment that is in our policy, because we went around and around looking at all the statutes, enabling statutes to allow us to do a tax abatement ordinance, but we learned that it has to be 100% affordable, and our model is really, and we have nothing in the queue. The model is really to try to do mixed income.
Right.
So anyways, our town council just passed a policy that they never enter into these fixed asset.
There's other ways to approach it. Like, we're doing something different in New Haven.
Right.
We're doing something different in Enfield. There's, you can, if you're creative, you can figure out different ways to approach it.
But I think they're supportive of entertaining this kind of it's a contract, right, that you enter into.
Yeah,
Kind of, but
it's 10 years essentially in West Hartford. What it is, we agreed on an initial valuation. What we said was, the hotel, we took what the hotel was paying at pre-COVID, the highest paying year, and we said that will be our starting point for assessment. So we said, actually, you were receiving less because the hotel got decimated during COVID and went through a reval that lowered its valuation. We will go pre-COVID, we'll set that, and then we were looking for certainty. And so we had, okay, you're gonna grow, we do have mill rate risk, and so does the town, right?
Yeah.
So if the mill rate goes up, we're subject to that. If the mill rate goes down, we benefit from that. So just like any other taxpayer. But what we did was we set a valuation number, and then we have a percentage that it increases every year. New Haven, go ahead, Sheila.
No, just, yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you about you have other developments in other towns. Are they also 100% affordable?
Yes, and I'm gonna go through.
You're gonna
few
go
of
through
them.
those? Okay.
Yeah. And just we named it the Camelot just as an interesting factoid. But it was called the West Hartford Inn, but when we did the historical research, the Camelot was actually the original name of the hotel because it was built in 65 during the Kennedy era.
I was gonna say, all the Kennedys living there.
So the next development that I started working on, it was almost at the same time, was in New Haven, on the corner of Derby and El Grasso, which is just across from the Yale Bowl is over here and the new music center. And there's a school here, and a church here.
It's a nice neighborhood.
Yeah. But nothing had really, this was what was the oldest dry cleaning business in the city of New Haven. It had been called Monarch Cleaners and had changed to be New England Linen. We received about $1 million award from DECD. We cleaned up the whole site. We'll be finished with this development in September, October of this year. It's a 64 apartment community. Here, Sheila, to answer your question, it's 100% affordable, but we only have a couple 80%. What we like to do is really understand what the need of a community is. And here in this community, there was a need for deeper affordability and larger unit types. So we actually have mostly 50s and 60s with 3-bedroom unit types and 2-bedroom unit types, quite large apartments. And so we anticipate that we'll have families moving in here and school children going to school right across the street, which you know is amazing for a family to be able to send their child just across the street to school. Here in New Haven, yeah, and we received the way that the tax deal worked in New Haven was we got a flat per unit. It was $450 a unit with basically a CPI adjuster every year. So it was a much deeper real estate tax agreement with the city that was for 17 years. The ward alderwoman, the president of the board of alders is a woman named Taisha Walker Myers. She actually this is her ward. And so she was the first person that I socialized the idea with, and she became a real champion for our development. So this is, again, it's exciting. I'm happy to bring people through here. We're actually touring next week. Arlevia Samuel, who heads up what was called LCI in New Haven. It's the Livable City Initiative, but it's really their Department of Housing in New Haven, is coming through to walk the site next week. We had a call yesterday with Elm City, which is the New Haven Housing Authority, to get in their queue because there is a dramatic need for people in New Haven that have vouchers but have no housing to go into. So we introduced the development to them with an understanding that they'll, send residents to us when we open the doors. This is a little bit more of a modern aesthetic. The architecture actually it doesn't quite look like this. It's not as dramatic. We've reduced some of what I thought was a little bit too much. Our building materials, we're using all Hardy, which is a cementitious product, very durable product with other finishes. I should tell you that in West Hartford, New Haven, we have all granite countertops. stainless steel appliances. If you walked into one of our apartments or in West Hartford, there's a high-end market rate apartment across the street. The finishes are nearly identical. In fact, the Salem Mascara Bruno, who's the commissioner of the Department of Housing, was at our grand opening, and I learned after the fact that she went back and told her managers after West Hartford that this needs to be the standard that we set for affordable housing in Connecticut. So, my kind of mantra has been like, everyone, regardless of who you are, should be able to live in a comfortable and beautiful place. And then there's pride of ownership, pride of rentership, pride of community. And so that's really why I wanted to start Honeycomb, was I just kind of had a different vision for what I wanted to be doing. Not to say that I wasn't doing that before, but I wanted to do it differently.
Or you gotta get to the round to the
Sure.
explanation of how you make all this work financially.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you want to hear, you don't want to hear the one
I
that
don't
doesn't,
wanna hear
doesn't
the
work?
whole thing. I just wanna
All right.
make sure that we get to that point, because, this, so far, it sounds really good.
Yeah,
And I'm
here's the cap. I'll
I'm
tell you.
skeptic sometimes about how do you make granite countertops and stainless and
Yeah.
low taxes and all this and affordable incomes.
I could pull up
Fun.
do you want me to pull up a pro forma? I could do that.
Well, that's all
But-
right. Just
or I could
continue.
talk
I
through-
just wanna.
Well, no, so just generally, if I use West Hartford as the example, because you asked the right question, like how did the town kick in or participate? So the way that the capital stack works is on the equity side, and this has been around since 1986, you sell the tax credits to an institutional investor. So different from traditional real estate where it may be a family or it might be a private equity firm, we're selling the credits to typically a large bank. In the case of West Hartford, it was Webster Bank. In the case of New Haven, it was Webster Bank. And as I said to Jennifer, the banks are not being altruistic. Let's not misunderstand this. They have what's called, there's a Community Reinvestment Act. It's been around forever. I believe the impetus for the CRA was redlining, which was when banks were preventing certain people and races of people to get bank loans and things like that. In response to that, CRA came into play and said to large institutions and smaller ones, you have an obligation to invest back into communities where you do business. That's CRA. One of the largest ways that banks do it, although there are other ways, is investing in affordable housing. So Webster Bank comes in and they buy all of our tax credits in West Hartford. That's equity in the deal. Let's say rough numbers, it's $10 million. The rest of the capital stack is made up of debt. CHFA, first mortgage. CHFA, what I refer to as soft debt. So there's another slug of CHFA money that comes underneath here. It basically gets serviced at a cash flow. So there's another piece of CHFA money, excuse me. There's Department of Housing money in West Hartford. There is DECD money. It's alphabet soup, essentially.
That's the money, that's.
It's the same as Eagle Hill
Yeah,
Green.
that's how that's.
It's a big pot full of all kinds of loans
Yeah.
and
We defer 50% of our fee. So that's developer sponsor dollars in. So we have to have skin in the game. And someone asked the question, I think in the last session, but it might be confusing. Do we flip or we're long-term owners. We're long-term owners because we get paid 50% of what we did in 18 months. We don't get paid, we get paid it over 15 years. So we are incentivized to stay in the deal. And then the last piece in West Hartford was $3 million of ARPA funds. So literally it took a village of funding sources to make this work. And that capital stack is replicated in New Haven as well. We just got an award for a development we're building in Montville, which is 57 apartments, 12 of which are set aside for adults with developmental disabilities, which is a massive problem, not just in Connecticut, but everywhere. We have, when I presented in Watertown, I didn't even know this, but one of the folks that was at the table, I was saying that as an aside, and the gentleman he said, I have a 50-year-old son who has a developmental disability. I don't know what is going to happen when I'm not there anymore, who lives in the house. And so right now there is very little opportunity for adults who are aging out of certain care to be able to live independently. It's a huge problem. We have 24/7 services provided for those 12 adults.
Wow.
So it doesn't always work out as well as you plan. This is Chester, Connecticut. Cute little town, sweet, quaint, but
Tell your head
Oh,
off if
okay.
they don't want what you're doing.
yeah, maybe. So anyway, this was, so then your nephew probably is quite familiar with this.
Sure.
It's got a,
Business person.
yeah, so this was land owned by the church across the street, the parish. It had been a rectory, which been kind of shuttered for many years. This is overflow parking for the church, mainly used now only for an occasional wedding or unfortunately funeral. There was a competitive RFP that went out that we submitted a proposal. We competed against a national developer called Penrose, who you may have heard of. They're out of Philadelphia. We were using the 830G. We knew we had to use 830G here because the zoning would not have allowed us to do what we needed to do for it to be economically viable. All we proposed was 40. We built this as kind of in the Chester style of a colonial style home, but broken into what we thought were tasteful, or we do think are tasteful apartments with a full community space. I forgot to mention in West Hartford, we have a full gym that residents do not have to pay anything for. We have 2 computer learning centers, and we have full community space that has a full kitchen that residents can have a party or whatever and no cost. Same thing in New Haven, and we have the same plan here in Chester. And what ended up happening was after 7 public meetings that went late into the night and lots of interesting things directed at me and others, we did get approval. The P and Z approved us, and then shortly thereafter, I told the story that my wife called me and asked me what I had done, and I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, there's a sheriff at our door." We got sued by some of the abutters, so she was receiving service of process of the lawsuit. So we've been in litigation with a handful of residents in Chester for the better part of a year. I was saying, there's a line, if anyone is into Broadway, there's a show called Hamilton. There is a famous scene between Burr and Hamilton where Hamilton basically confronts Burr and says, if you stand for nothing, what will you fall for? So that's not a good way to run your business because you will just inevitably fall. But here in Chester, we really felt like we have a moral obligation to defend our approval and to go forward with the development. Again, it's not a recipe for success everywhere, but here we really felt like in Chester, they're at 2.5% of meeting their 10% affordable housing goal, and more than 60% of the residents of Chester would actually income qualify.
They're at 2.5%?
Yeah.
I
I think you were at
5.6.
Okay.
We're at 6 point.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I thought we came down when we started.
you're doing a lot better than a lot of others, that's for sure. But you should keep doing more. So the last thing I'll show is this is a development we're doing in Enfield and Thompsonville on the river. A little bit different because only 20% of the apartments are set at 80%, and the rest are what I would say is market rate. And this is where the new train station has been approved to go in Thompsonville on the Connecticut River.
This will be transit-oriented
Yes,
development.
yep. And so interestingly, the capital stack to make something like this work is not dissimilar from what I described before. We got a $4 million award to clean up the site from DECD. We're going into the new CMDA, which has been recently funded with $90 million by the governor, with David Corus being the new
Wait,
executive.
yeah,
It was being called MRDA.
Yeah,
And they
the-
changed it
yeah.
because people didn't want MRDA.
yeah.
Yeah.
The
So-
municipal read.
And now it's called the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority,
Right.
so CMDA.
Okay,
So you don't run into that
better.
issue.
Yeah.
No murder.
Murdoch,
Um,
Massachusetts like me.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
That Cheshire was there was a competitive grant process.
It was actually the church. No, the church put out a request for proposals for the land they had 3+ acres that they wanted to dispose of.
So you bought the land from the church.
We haven't bought it. You were under contract to buy it, yeah.
Yes.
And then I got the-
If your litigation clears up.
Yeah.
It's for, and they wanted affordable or
Yes.
attainable,
Yes,
they said attainable.
yeah.
So, for the other properties, did you partner with the town at all? With any of them, like in purchasing, or like did the town did any of these towns put an RFP for like town property?
No, but that's pretty common, not in any of these examples. But I have historically done partnership with both housing authorities and municipalities. And there's another mechanism, actually, before I came here, I was meeting with a friend, an environmental consultant that I've known for a very long time. And there's also interesting, and you should probably look at it using a land bank structure.
Yeah, I've been, that's been on my list.
And there's someone who I can introduce you to that is quite good and is kind of the expert in Connecticut for using a land bank structure. He just did it in Bristol with a historic building that required an environmental cleanup. His land bank bought it and got the funding for the cleanup. And then the evolution of that is the land bank will then sell it. Sometimes they'll retain a 99, sometimes they will, or sometimes they'll just help the municipality to sell it and then engage with the developer for the development.
And the regional housing strategy that we're, the whatever group we're on to,
Right.
that we're where we met, they're trying to do a regional land bank.
Yeah.
I don't know how, I don't know enough about them.
I'm not sure I know what a land bank
Yeah,
is.
I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, is it sort of like a land trust, but for affordable housing? So like, you put it, like it's a group buys some land, and then the way, instead of having a trail or natural resources, they would have, they would deed restrict it.
Yep.
For affordable housing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Connecticut, land banks are statutorily governed, so there's a, like, you have to, not any one or entity can become a land bank. There are land banks. So this person that I know runs a land bank.
Okay, that would be.
I'll connect you with him.
Yeah.
He's
I
a
have
really good
another
bet.
Question, change the subject slightly. Are all the properties that you've been building on, do they all have public water and sewer before you get there?
Yeah, that
That
was
is a
actually,
question.
I was
Thank
like,
you.
the whole land
Yeah,
bank thing, then I
that's-
was like, that was gonna be.
West Hartford does, New Haven does, Chester, and Enfield does, Montville does. Chester, interestingly, does. And the site, very interestingly, I forgot to mention this, in Chester's affordable housing plan and plan of conservation of development, this actual site was identified with a red star as a developable parcel because it sits on the trunk line of, Chester has very little public water and sewer. They actually, public water and sewer that they have, they rent from Deep River. And they're only at about 30% of that capacity that they've had since 2012. And therefore, residents who are on public water and sewer have massively high water bills. This development would have brought down everybody's water bill.
Makes a smaller, they have a smaller share of the.
Right. Correct. But that's an editorial. So to answer your question, yes, but I do encounter situations where not always.
So I was, what I was leading up to is, if you don't already know this, is we
Yes.
even got squat in the way of infrastructure.
No, I know.
Got some.
Some, yeah,
Right.
Depends on where you
Yeah.
go.
Yep.
but.
All southern Mansfield, it's got lots of,
Yeah, that property over there has.
yeah,
Well, southern, right next to the bottom.
right,
Yeah.
we've
There's
got,
a
you know,
huge-
the
there's a
mall,
huge
that, so we
property.
have two sewer service areas. The northern part of Mansfield, that is, I think it's 63 properties that sends their sewage to Yukon.
Mhm.
And then the southern part of town is, I don't know how many properties, but they send their sewage to the Wyndham wastewater treatment plant.
Mhm.
And so the northern, the gate Connecticut Water, southern, it's Wyndham Water Works, so.
Never the twain shall meet.
It is,
definitely-
it becomes an issue,
Yeah.
but I know, issues are overcomable
Yeah.
if you get enough people in the room who are smarter than me and more creative to put their heads together and figure out a solution.
Well, actually, one of the jump ahead only slightly, HB 5002 has some.
Yeah.
Possibilities in that, this new state legislation that Lamont's gonna sign.
Mhm.
Actually has some infrastructure
Mhm.
capacity. So, but this is it's one of my, big concerns is it's hard to put something where you don't have the infrastructure.
We can, we can, I don't think we should let that be a barrier.
It's not a barrier. I'm just
I-
saying it's a
it-
hurdle we gotta jump over.
Yeah. Swayze, I've been
Another
talking a
one.
lot about that, and I think, you know, we gotta. You know, we're not gonna build another standard,
No.
and
a lot of reasons.
I don't think people want that, and, but I do think I think we can do. some
The
good work.
picture of the Chester thing struck me as the kind of thing that the people of Mansfield would not.
Well, if you think
Joke on
about, South Mansfield where I live, even Freedom Green, that's exactly what it looks like.
Freedom
And
is like-
the property right across the street can fit, I think it's like. They've zoned it already for a development of a condo type, and that would fit aesthetically, and it's on a bus line, and there's
Public
sidewalks, there's public water, there's sewers. And the land is already cleared, like it's,
Farmland.
yeah, so I
So,
mean,
yeah,
there's.
I know there's possibilities. I was trying to.
Louis, have you done any age restricted or any homeless set asides in any of these developments?
Historically, I've done age restricted. Homeless, I've not done, none of these are homeless set asides. Montville, as I mentioned, are developmentally disabled adults. None of the developments I just talked about here have homeless set asides, no. But I have in other work that I've done in the last 20 years. In fact, I had a partnership. I did a bunch of work in Washington, D.C., in Southeast Washington, D.C., in the Anacostia neighborhood. And at the time, it was Department of Mental Health and then became Department of Behavioral Health. But we had an agreement to work with many of whom were people coming out of homelessness. And oftentimes, and I'll say this, I believe where you have services in place for someone, that's the key, and they become very strong residents. Oftentimes, unfortunately, some residents who don't have services but might have the same issues, that's really where the problem comes in. So long as someone has kind of a holistic approach to their health, housing and health, then it makes for a resident who becomes a real important member of the community.
Right.
So that's kind of the presentation. You know, I've said to Jennifer, and I said it here to you, the goal here is not necessarily for me to, find a new development to work on. That would be a wonderful kind of side benefit, but really to be having these conversations in municipalities that actually want housing like this, to me, is one, refreshing and energizing. But two, if I can at all help you, whether it's with me or another developer, to be a resource so that someone doesn't come in here and say they're going to do something and then it end up not being what you thought it was. I'm happy to be a resource. Because the last thing that I want as someone who participates in what I think is a critically important industry is when someone comes in and does that and is not a good steward, that then has a very bad effect for me, even if I was not the developer responsible.
How do you go about finding properties to develop?
I mean, sometimes it's conversations like this, and oftentimes it's just relationships.
Knowing our GIS map.
Yeah, so we'll do it differently. So if I know that a particular town has a particular, some towns put, here are the sites that within their plan of conservation of development or on their economic development webpage, they'll actually list out sites that they are ripe for development. And you can kind of pair that with, well, what are the issues du jour of the state, or how is the state prioritizing funding, and try to match those up and then approach it that way. There's a bunch of different ways that I will try to find opportunities. But oftentimes-
Advanced C2, do they have, don't they have, they have like do they list properties?
They might, I haven't worked with them
Okay.
in that way.
Okay.
You know, what has ended up happening after 20 years is, you know, oftentimes it's just through a relationship. I mean, like at lunch today, my friend Mark Castler was saying, oh, I said I was coming here, and he said, oh, I did a study on a 40 acre site in Mansfield. I wonder whatever happened with it.
Yeah, whatever happened.
It was an environmental study.
Well, 40 acres.
Is it a competitive market for, like, are there other people like you in the state?
No one like me.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah, there are.
Are other people, I haven't met the other developers in our group.
So Jeff Sager, who I kind of teased in the first, he wasn't at the second meeting.
Okay,
He was at the first. He has, and I say this, you know, he has been a real poster developer for the state. He has
Mhm.
done really wonderful developments in Connecticut. He is, and I knew him before. I didn't know we were both going to be on this committee, but
Mhm.
I knew him. His reputation kind of precedes him, so I knew him. First, I knew of him, then I knew him, and then after this, like we went out and had lunch.
Mm.
He's really like, I kind of joked in the beginning when I said, you know, who do you want to be? I said, I want to be Jeff Sager. Like,
Oh, right, okay.
he's like, his reputation is flawless. And I say that, you know, knowing that, you know, I don't mind, you know, there's several very, very qualified developers in the state that do good work that I would recommend. And you should talk to other people and get other perspectives.
Is there some sort of a communications network or some sort of world that we could like
Yeah,
communicate with to get lots of these people? I mean, rather than just like single shot, is there a place where you all look for stuff or
Like
where
you
you,
all get your.
a magazine? I don't know. I'm just.
Um, DOH and CHFA are both good resources, and when a municipality reaches out, they do have capacity building, even dollars available. And I would, you know, I think if you approach DOH and CHFA, like they would be arms open to having a conversation. I believe that they do have, well, Partnership for Strong Communities, which is a nonprofit. Okay. And also, I don't know if you know HDF, Kylie Goslin, the Hartford Development Fund, Kylie Goslin used to run, was the former executive director for Partnership for Strong Communities. She's awesome. She's mainly focused now, and I'll tell you one other thing that I think is vitally important that I'm working on is affordable home ownership.
Mm.
And there is a big push right now at the state level. We've actually submitted to DOH, and we had our initial meeting Monday on a proposal to do affordable home ownership, actually in West Hartford, townhome style, 60 and 80% of area median income. The cost to the homeowner is capped. They income qualify, and the difference between the sale price and what it costs to build is funded by the state.
That's definitely a model that I think our community
Yeah.
is very interested in looking at.
And I mean, it's pretty neat, I think, to look at that. I think I'm very interested in figuring out how to make that work. It's not easy right now just because there's such a variance, there's such a delta between what it currently costs to build and what you can, because of the limitations, sell the home for. And what that means is that gap funding is just significant to be able to get the numbers
Our
to work.
community has an additional, you know, pressure on those kinds of properties because the university has so many students that need housing off campus.
Yeah.
It drives the real estate market, all the
Correct.
prices of homes up because you can make so much money
Rental.
as a rental.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
entry-level homes are rented by students.
Yeah.
So that is another, I think, opportunity to look at. And that would be, I think it's complementary to, I don't think it's an either or.
No.
I think both are important.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I'm interested in. So we're also looking at something in Hartford as well that would be affordable home ownership. I guess I would say, because I know that you have an agenda, I'm mindful of that I will happily come back. I, my guess is that there's probably questions and that will, I hope, come out of this, that once you think about it and noodle on it and let it marinate a little bit, and then we get back together, and I said the same thing in Watertown, and to me, the key is, if I were sitting in your seat, I'd want to kind of understand, well, like, what's our objective? What are we trying to do here? And I know that there's an affordable housing plan. I know there's a plan of conservation and development. I've looked at both. But it's kind of taking those off the page and then figuring out how do you implement them? What is the next step? How does that evolve into actually really jumping off the page and into a real development?
I've talked with this group, and just one of the things, I haven't talked to you about this, but we're doing our new POCD, and you look at, we're bleeding school children.
Mhm.
We want school children. We have the first net zero school in the state. We pride ourselves on education, so our enrollment is declining. It's declining in all three of the schools. The middle school is getting very low. So student population enrollment is increasing, and the people who create those children that go to schools, that is decreasing.
Yeah.
And then we have then we have a lot of people over 60. So I think if I'm looking at housing overall and attainable housing for all people, we need to get more families in Mansfield. Otherwise, we are not going to be a strong community that can. So that's what, and I think affordable housing or attainable housing is one way that we can really do that. I think it's an essential piece. I think that homeownership is an essential piece to get into some of these neighborhoods that are just, they're not diverse. They're not that community like what you taught. They're not the melting pot anymore, right? They're all students, which is fine. We want students, but they're just becoming so student centric, and we don't have the families that can come in and we can all live together, right? So that's but I don't know, what do you guys, we have something to think about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of our future discussions, we sort of alluded to on our agenda this week, is putting together a statement or a vision of what this objective is. What are we trying to achieve? How do we think what are some of the tools we think we can use to get more families in here and to house our seniors and do all those things? We need to, and then we boil that down into something that we can show to developers that this is what we're trying to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you help us do it.
Yeah, so I could talk with Louis for like days. I have so many questions to ask you, but I know that you have things to do and this committee has, but we should continue.
Yeah, we should just reconvene.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to come. Yeah, sure.
The tiny homes that we did in New Haven,
Yeah.
Rosette Village.
there's that one. Do you see that as like a viable option for the homeowner piece? For developers?
I mean, I
Just your
personally
opinion.
love the concept. Sometimes for myself.
No wonder.
In the woods somewhere.
Yes,
Um,
only by myself, yeah.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't know, I guess the feasibility for a developer, to look at that, it most likely would be to meet the senior need. because
so
they're
our
small.
concept in West Hartford is, it's a townhome style, but it's an apartment over a flat. So it's home ownership and it looks and feels like a townhome, but really it's essentially a ground floor apartment and a second floor. The idea being hopefully that there's ground floor might be for a senior for, a variety of reasons, and then second floor occupied by, it could be a senior too, but potentially a non-senior. So I wouldn't say that's a tiny home, but they certainly from a square footage standpoint would be smaller than what you would typically think of for a standalone single family home.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's gotta be ways to build. And in many towns now, you're seeing ADUs, West Hartford just allowed ADUs.
Yeah, we've done that.
That's another way to think about, allowing people to age in place, maybe with their kids in the home and they have an ADU, so that they're in close proximity. There's a lot of different, I think, strategies to think about. Personally, I like the tiny home concept. I think, I don't think you need as much as people think you need in terms of space, to be comfortable and be able to have a very nice place to live that is
Yeah,
attainable.
I haven't seen many kind of start to pop up, like.
No, I haven't.
Their images, that's why I'm like, well, maybe it's just not, these like developers wouldn't
They're-
make enough.
They're expensive and when people come to us and they wanna do an ADU, Amazon has those
Like the
ADUs.
prefabs.
Yeah.
They're not code compliant.
Uh,
They don't meet our building code.
uh,
And so we're like zoning, you can meet your setbacks, blah, 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 and our building, nope, sorry, yep.
gotcha.
Interesting about that though, and I think things are gonna start
Yeah.
changing. I just read in, I just forwarded it out, actually, but I have, two interns from UConn that I spoke in their class. So they both actually three, one lives in the neighborhood in New Haven.
Oh,
And
wow.
he reached out to me. And so he met me on site yesterday. He's going to be an intern during the last several months of construction. And then I have two students from the Hillside program, which is UConn they actually have $1 million of real money that the students they invest.
Yeah, From the business school.
Yeah, from the business school.
Whoa.
So I have two of
Pretty
them,
amazing.
who are interning with me, but I just sent them.
That's-
No, I think it's private.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's private.
They
They invested
actually.
in Mesa?
Yeah,
they
I
can-
showed them Enfield. They didn't want to do Enfield, but that's okay.
And they also make money.
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of times, so like, while it's
For
funded by
that.
private money,
bring it
it's
back.
also, they bring it back,
Okay.
and it's under the guise of a faculty member who does investments, so it's not like they're just.
Yeah,
giving away
it's under
money.
Dave
Yeah.
Hornby yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So actually, this is back to Texas again, and not political, but they just passed 6-story single stair buildings being allowed. So in terms of means of egress, right? In a yes,
The 6-story.
for 6-story. Now there needs to be fully sprinklered, alarmed, there have to be other fire protections, but there has to be. You can't, zoning and building can't be the tail that wags the dog all the time.
No.
So at some point, there's got to be a give and a
I've
take.
been to New York City and my daughter has lived in 2 fifth floor walk-ups. It includes, I don't know.
Yeah.
And she's on, and with no fire escape. That's what,
Well, and fire building code today is so stringent
Yeah.
that, you're building to a level that hopefully is the safest, you can ever
of
build.
course.
So if I'm not you never give up on or
No.
give in on safety.
No,
But if there was some flexibility to allow for things to become more affordable,
yeah,
because the code is,
crazy.
I mean, some of the things that we have to do, it can render a development infeasible.
The insulation, I mean, we want very well insulated places, right? But they're so tight
They're super tight.
that you have to spend money on an air.
Ventilation.
I mean,
Yeah.
which is, we want energy efficient buildings, right?
All right,
But
so-
yeah, anyways.
So in the interest of time, we have
Hmm.
about 10-15 minutes left before we're supposed to be out of here.
Right.
Any more questions? Any more questions for Lou?
Thank you very much for.
Thank you, Lou. We'll have you back for sure.
Okay, and Jennifer has my contact, and if you ever want to talk outside of a formal meeting, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, we do that sometimes.
Okay,
I think I'm going to entertain a motion to postpone our,
I think I don't want to knock Sheila off.
oh,
If you,
who's got control?
so can you stop sharing?
Yes, so Sharon.
You can make someone else look.
And then you, from your computer,
Hmm.
you just leave, but I don't think you can end the meeting because you
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay. You guys are muted. Muted, muted, muted. You're muted. Jesus Christ. Anybody looking? You're muted. Muted.
Oh,
Okay,
oh, can you
sorry.
hear us
There you
now?
go. All right, thank
Oh,
you.
now I can't hear you.
Because you turned the volume down. I think that's why. Sheila.
Say something.
Okay, my volume is up.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Hear you.
We're talking about, meeting on July 3.
Are you around?
You around for that?
I don't think I'm gonna be here, no. That's all right, you can go ahead, but could I just say something real quick? I think, I don't know whether we're gonna have time to review what we met with Sharon Costelli, who's another developer, very different than this kind of developer, but she's done lots of low-income housing all over the state. And she said, what we need to decide is what are our priorities? And what is it that we have to offer? And what do we want a developer to do? You know, make it very concrete. What is it that we want? Well, how much money are we willing to put up to what kind of money? And, you know, how many units are we looking for in a range? So we have to decide that because we'll endlessly discuss all this,
And I think
you know.
what maybe we ought to make as our goal for the July 3 meeting is to come back to the meeting to be prepared to identify what it is we're trying to do to the best of our knowledge anyway. I mean, it's gonna, it's gonna still be loose, but to just try to lay out what our objective is and what we'd like to see so that we can show it to developers and explain to them, this is what we see for our town. I mean, for example, I don't think we're gonna go to a developer and say, we want you to build a 4-story,
No, no.
we like the little things like Chester, that picture of Chester, but we need to lay all that out for someone before they can talk to us about what they can do. They need to know what we want. So I think let's make that the goal for the July 3 meeting.
Yeah, I won't be here, but I'll send you something.
And I don't know if you noticed it, but I sent my notes in on the Castelli meeting. They're in our packet now.
Yeah,
Right, the 502. So Sharon was helpful in a lot of ways, so I sort of summarized what we went over there. And she agreed, she and Lou are on the same page. They need to know what we want and what we can do for them. Now, how about the August meeting? Where are we on that one?
I'm okay for August.
August 7th?
So we don't take that out, okay.
Oh,
I'll put it back in.
that's done. I'm putting it on the floor, so this,
I can do
I
it.
can do it.
okay,
I can be there.
all right. I mean, that's good. So let's try to meet August 7th.
And are you meeting July 3rd as well?
Yes.
Okay, yep, so no meeting
Okay.
So
cancellation.
we'll just,
Okay.
right. Jennifer, you have anything to report?
August 7th, we're meeting too,
August 7th, yes,
and July 3rd and August.
yeah.
Just that you did get some correspondence from
Right,
Oh, yeah.
Matthew,
Yeah.
Matthew.
Matthew Coolbreth,
Mhm.
who went to nursery school with my youngest daughter.
Yeah. So he just, I think there is, there's a movement afoot, I think, there's a movement. Yeah, I do think to kind of figure out how we can kind of, people want us to be able to restrict.
Mm.
And so like some of his ideas are,
One solution we talked about was having a different tax rate
Tax rate
for
for-
residents versus non-residents, and I'm pretty sure that would be a violation of.
That's,
state-
that's, yeah.
state
That'd
law.
be
They do that.
Yes, you can.
inventory.
right,
There was.
He wanted to know if we also have done the demographics, and so, for example, if you look at the Northwest plan, that very much breaks down the demographics of who lives where.
yeah.
We could refer him to that, and I think we have the census data.
Yep, and we're gonna get more census data. In fact, I forwarded, there's some other correspondence going around in the ether, in the internet. And I forwarded both Matthew's email and some of this other stuff to our planning consultant, because I did feel like it's important. There are so many things that I think people want the town to be able to do that we would love to be able to do. Some of them we wouldn't want to do, some of them we would want to do. But I think we all can agree, we want more housing for families, we
Right.
want more multi-generational housing for diverse. We need student housing, but I think we want a more diverse housing stock
Yes.
for a wide range of people, wherever.
Yeah.
And a wide range of incomes, so I think some of the stuff that gets raised a lot of times from residents are, like, why do we have so much student housing? Like, why is it like this? Why isn't the town doing this? I think we need to talk about what,
Like educate
The
along.
market.
like, what we have done and then what we can't do because of fair housing or yeah. So I think we need to do a better job, probably just communicating what we are doing, what we can do, what we can't do. And I'm sure there are things that we can do that we're not doing and maybe we should be doing. And
Well,
if we could uncover that, that would be great.
one idea
Yeah.
that Matthew Coolbeth identified, he didn't use these exact terms, but basically talked about buying deed restrictions from older people who want to leave their homes and
Yeah.
Yep.
you could, by buying a deed restriction with town money, you could require that the new purchaser or renter be, in the affordable realm. I think Steve Farino has talked about
Yeah, yeah.
buying deed restrictions too.
But he's talked about it for the multifamily apartments, I think.
I think,
work in a single family home as well.
yeah,
I,
I don't know whether the economics of that idea.
I don't know the economics of it. It's really,
I would think twice before I sold
right.
my property. He took a bunch of money for a deed restriction. I don't know. It would be
Right.
to invite him to attend meetings.
Matthew,
Yeah, I mean,
Let me see.
I thought maybe it would have been.
yeah, like it's just to be like, we are thankful you're interested in this. There's a lot of limitations, but we would value you coming to some meetings.
Or I'll
They
just
don't,
a member if I'm not mistaken.
like, yeah, so even just like,
Robin, I didn't hear from her this year.
but even just like, the public can come to every meeting. It's
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's not like we're
Yeah.
voting body. It's a much different type of committee. So I think it's okay if we say, please come, like,
Yeah.
learn about this,
Did
become
you
engaged.
respond to Matthew at all?
I said I would, put this in,
In our
packet.
Do you have his email address?
Yep.
Because,
It's on, he emailed us,
oh,
so.
it did. Is it
Yeah,
on the
Mac
sheet
at
there?
Courtyard.
Yeah.
I can write back to him if everybody wants.
Maybe and just tell him we're meeting on July.
Oh, you
3rd
can
in
invite him
August.
to a meeting and I can respond to his letter a little bit. Mac at Courtyard.
I wonder if his grandmother was Trudy Coolbeth, who I worked with many, 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 many years ago on affordable housing.
Hmm. Oh,
I don't know, I
Maybe.
know him because he went to nursery school with my youngest daughter.
Yeah.
And the name, I wouldn't know,
Coolbeth.
drove my car over him, but I know his name.
Well, let's not
Oh,
drive.
you would have
But I
to
won't
die.
do that. Won't drive my car over.
Well, thank you for inviting Lewis today.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
He's,
Very interesting.
it's, that housing strategy group that I'm on is fascinating. I could, and just to hear, like, it's so cool to have planners, like, it's all about the regulations.
Mhm.
And then, and it's all about like planner wonky stuff like that, and he's like, you know, you gotta make it real, and then you have people who are providing housing to people with a lot of needs, and then they're bringing their perspective, so it's
He
really.
seemed really hands-on too, and when he seemed to know the people that are in his buildings and stuff, which is a good sign, it seems to me. He's not just in it for the money or the,
Yeah, I liked his sense of ethics and values.
yeah.
Prioritizing community and safe places and less routes. People need.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to second it.
All in favor,
Bye.
Hi,
or adjourn.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, see you,
Thanks,
Sheila.
Sheila.
thank you.
Bye. Bye, Sheila.